It had been an unusual day, capping off a peculiar week for Irvin "Dusty" Desmond. When he set off for work that morning, a vague unease hung in the air, growing steadily since his wife mentioned the upcoming party a week earlier. Though Dusty couldn't articulate it, he felt a sense of foreboding, as if anticipating something unsettling. Throughout the workday, this feeling persisted, making Dusty jittery and unable to focus. He harbored a reluctance towards attending the party, a sentiment he'd always held about his wife's office gatherings. Despite his reservations, he knew he couldn't skip it, acquiescing to his wife's wishes as usual. As he shut down his computer at week's end, Dusty glanced at a photo of his sons, the sole bright spot in recent months. Reflecting on this, he felt a brief moment of warmth amidst the growing apprehension. On the way home, traffic delays due to an accident heightened his anxiety. Arriving slightly late, he braced himself for his wife's usual greeting, a critical remark about his timing and a directive to wear a preferred gray suit, which he inwardly resisted. The party, hosted by the firm's new partner, James Fielding, unfolded with escalating tension. Tracy, visibly stressed, clung tightly to Dusty, expressing cryptic reassurances about their relationship amidst her evident discomfort. "Tracy, what's wrong?" Dusty asked, concerned by her unusual behavior. "Just remember, Dusty, I love you. Whatever happens tonight, it won't change anything between us," Tracy replied urgently, hinting at unseen anxieties. Dusty absorbed her words, his unease deepening as the evening progressed, unsure of what lay ahead amidst the strained atmosphere of the gathering. "I don't understand what you're talking about," Dusty muttered. "You're right, these lawyer types and high-powered folks aren't my scene, but what's new? These parties have never been enjoyable for me, but I'll grin and bear it, as always." "Just remember, we're okay," Tracy replied, stepping away from him as he guided her into the room. James Fielding presided over the room from a grand bar adorned with a provocative painting of a nude woman on a bed. Dusty sidled up to the bar to fetch a white wine for Tracy and a scotch for himself, exchanging a nod with Fielding that carried an unsettling undertone. Dusty despised that look. He was starting to think he despised Fielding himself. With drinks in hand, Dusty intercepted Tracy, who was making her way towards Fielding and his entourage. Unwittingly, Tracy had positioned Dusty with his back to the bar, leaving him on the fringes of the group. She approached Fielding, who greeted her with a formal kiss on the cheek before resuming his pontification. Standing on the periphery, Dusty tuned out of the conversation, momentarily distracted by the provocative painting and its significance in Fielding's ostentatious display. Returning to awareness, Dusty noticed several pairs of eyes darting in his direction. Instinctively, he glanced down at his suit, checking for spills or an open fly, finding neither, yet the stares persisted. Feeling increasingly uneasy, Dusty turned back to the bar, his gaze once again drawn to the erotic painting. "That painting is incredibly erotic," Dusty thought to himself. The woman depicted, with raven hair and a post-coital expression, bore a striking resemblance to someone familiar, too familiar. The realization hit him like a freight train. The woman in the painting was standing right next to him. Dusty froze, his mouth agape, oblivious to the smirks exchanged between Fielding and Tracy. The room fell into an awkward silence, all eyes now fixed on Dusty, some with amusement, others with pity. After what felt like an eternity, Dusty finally composed himself enough to whisper to Tracy, "That's you." The room, previously hushed, seemed to amplify his words, drawing even more attention. "No," Tracy responded quietly. "That woman has black hair, mine's auburn, silly." She chuckled softly, though her attempt at humor only seemed to heighten the tension. Several guests glanced between Tracy and the painting, stifling laughter. Fielding winked at Tracy, compounding Dusty's confusion and embarrassment. Dusty glanced at Tracy, then back at the painting, his voice almost detached as he spoke, "Black hair, but auburn pubic hair. Your pubic hair." Tracy scrutinized the painting, realizing for the first time that the artist had accurately depicted the color of her pubic hair, contrasting with her dyed black hair. She wondered if this detail was intentional or merely overlooked. It was a revelation Dusty was bound to have eventually, that the painting was of her. Tracy and Fielding had expected the discoveries to come later, possibly after Dusty had a few drinks and his guard was down. The sudden unveiling caught them off guard. Before Dusty could process the situation fully, strong hands seized him, steering him forcefully into a smaller adjoining room. Fielding and Tracy followed closely behind. Fielding's contemptuous expression bore down on Dusty as he sneered, "Listen, you insignificant fool. This is how it's going to be now. Your wife belongs to me, and you can keep your home life when I'm not using her. Fight back, and my firm will represent Tracy, taking everything you own," Fielding continued with a chilling threat. "And I'll still have her." Dusty felt trapped, physically and emotionally, caught in a situation that seemed to spiral out of control. Tracy, matter-of-factly, clarified the situation. "This has been happening for a while, and you were oblivious. You haven't lost anything. We can keep our marriage intact as it was, or I can take half in a divorce and continue seeing Jim. It's up to you." Dusty's voice cracked with hurt and anger. "Why would I ever want to be with you again? You're sleeping with him, making that perfectly clear. I won't be a pity option for James Fielding's mistress." Tracy's response was cutting. "Feel better now that you've called me a whore? What's next? Accusing me of having cooties? You really are a small man." Fielding's laughter echoed in the room as Dusty was escorted out of the house, the sound of their mockery ringing in his ears. He struggled to hold back tears as he left, feeling utterly betrayed and humiliated. Later, outside the room, Fielding gloated to Tracy, "Did you see the look on his face when he saw that painting? He's sharp enough to figure out when it was painted, at least the start of it." "Yeah, I guess I owe him an apology," Tracy admitted. "But when he accused me of cheating, I felt I needed to retaliate somehow. The painting turned out to be a brilliant move, Jim." "But you were cheating on him back then," Fielding chuckled. Tracy followed Dusty out, knowing she needed to console her husband. In reality, Dusty had suspicions over the past year when things didn't quite add up, but Tracy always countered by accusing him of mistrust, which effectively silenced him. He felt guilty for doubting his wife of 27 years. Driving home together, Dusty reflected on Tracy's career at a Scott Hansen LLC. After raising their 2 sons, she returned to work, initially under the firm's senior partner, Old Man Hansen. When Fielding took over, Tracy expressed discomfort with his attention towards her. Initially, she talked about Fielding positively, but abruptly stopped. Despite Dusty's belief that Tracy still turned heads with her beauty, he felt fortunate to be married to her. He acknowledged his own appearance, solid and unassuming, more akin to an accountant, his actual profession. Aware of Tracy's new boss being a younger, handsome man, Dusty began monitoring her activities. Tracy hadn't worked late more with Fielding than with Hansen until about a year ago, when late nights increased, culminating in a trip to New Orleans for a legal symposium. Though Dusty wasn't thrilled about the trip, he understood its necessity. His expressed concerns were met with accusations of distrust, a stark contrast to their long marriage. No longer feeling festive upon arriving home, Dusty poured himself a scotch and sank into his favorite lazy boy. Life had taken a sudden turn for the worse, reducing him to tears. Until recently, Dusty believed their marriage was flawless. Lately, however, cracks appeared, initially overlooked and later denied by Tracy. Despite increased late nights and changes in Tracy's wardrobe and demeanor towards him, their intimacy remained unchanged. Dusty had several single malts and eventually dozed off in his chair while watching It's a Wonderful Life. Tracy woke him at 1:45 a.m., gently urging him to come to bed. "I never saw that coming, Tracy. I just hope the boys never see that painting," Dusty remarked, his tone detached. Tracy blushed deeply, realizing Dusty's concern about their children seeing the revealing portrait. Dusty struggled to contain his anger, his fists clenched momentarily. His late father-in-law's teachings about restraint were perhaps all that kept him from reacting violently. When he calmed himself, he relaxed his hands. Tracy, noticing his movement, widened her eyes, suddenly realizing the gravity of the situation she had caused. "Well, since we're airing things out, can you answer 2 questions for me?" "Why, and how long?" Dusty asked, his voice tinged with hurt and betrayal. Tracy hesitated, staring at the carpet as her emotions shifted. "It wasn't planned. It just happened about a year ago. Jim and I clicked in ways we hadn't in years. Our relationship had grown stale. Jim's assertiveness appealed to me. When you accused me of cheating, I was angry. Jim and we found a way to get back at you, Tracy admitted, her voice wavering. But you were already cheating. That's not revenge, that's rubbing it in my face, you bitch. Dusty snapped, his anger flaring. Tracy looked up briefly, then bowed her head in silence. So what you're saying is, you chose new and exciting over what we had for all those years. None of it meant anything to you? Dusty's voice cracked with pain. I still love you, Dusty. But I'm not in love with you anymore. Jim and I connect on so many levels. It's different, it's thrilling, Tracy explained, her voice tinged with regret. Of course it's thrilling. You're a new conquest to him, and he's a new thrill to you. You haven't lived the daily grind with him, raised kids together, done the mundane chores, Dusty retorted bitterly. And that painting. You'd never let me take a risque photo of you, but you pose naked and satisfied for some painter so Mr. Wonderful can hang you in his house for everyone to see what a beautiful slut you are. Dusty's words were cutting, his gaze unwavering. Tracy blushed deeply again, focusing on her shoes. After a moment, she met Dusty's gaze. It was thrilling, being naked in front of someone else right after making love with Jim, knowing he was capturing our intimacy for everyone to see, Tracy confessed softly. Did you sleep with the painter, too? Dusty blurted out in disbelief. Well, once. After the final posing session. Jim and I felt we owed him after teasing him all week, Tracy admitted quietly. Of course. Tit for tat, Dusty scoffed sarcastically. After a tense silence, Dusty asked, Did you forget about the boys? The boys? What does this have to do with them? Tracy countered defensively. They're grown now, living their own lives. The revelation cut through Dusty's heart, realizing how far apart their lives had drifted without him even noticing. You don't think this will affect the boys? Dusty challenged, his voice heavy with disappointment. You're not ending our family. You wouldn't want more people knowing you're a cuckold, Tracy retorted dismissively. And deep down, you know you love me. Give me some time, and we can be us again, just like always. I've overestimated you all these years, Dusty sighed. First, I thought you loved me as much as I loved you. Second, I thought you were smarter. Tracy grimaced at Dusty's words, prompting him to clarify. Tracy, a no-fault divorce doesn't erase fault. It just means the state won't assign blame for dividing assets. I'm not afraid to expose the truth that you've been unfaithful and I've been cuckolded. How do you think our sons will react to that? Tracy faltered, her words stumbling out. You wouldn't. Watch me, Dusty interrupted sharply. You'd ruin my relationship with our boys just to get back at me? You're despicable. Tracy hissed. No, not to ruin your relationship, but to tell my side of the story, the truth, Dusty shot back. The truth hurts, doesn't it? Initially confident, Tracy now looked defeated as she whispered, Can't we talk this through? I'm afraid not, Tracy. You made your bed when you slept with him, Dusty replied coldly. And what have I ever done to make you think I'd tolerate you being with another man? The next day, Dusty called his sons to break the news. Are you sure about this, Dad? Mom would never do something like that, Robbie, the eldest, protested. They even had a painting done of her after, you know, Dusty explained, struggling with the words. Hung it up at his place. They all thought it was hilarious. No way, Dad. That's insane, Robbie exclaimed in disbelief. Mike, the younger son, listened quietly before responding. Wow, Dad. What did you do to piss Mom off? She wouldn't do this without a reason, Mike said thoughtfully. Dusty paused, grappling with his son's disbelief. I think I let her down after all these years. He was younger, more forceful, something new, Dusty admitted. I'm not buying it, Dad, Mike replied bluntly. Sorry. Believe what you want, Mike. She cheated on me, and I'm not standing for it. A week later, Tracy was served with divorce papers. She tried to fight it, even suggesting counseling, but Dusty's revelation about the painting shifted the judge's opinion. The judge looked taken aback as Dusty made his case about Tracy's indiscretions. Seriously, the judge questioned Dusty incredulously. Naked and thoroughly satisfied, by the looks of it, Your Honor, Dusty replied matter-of-factly. In another man's home, Mrs. Dustman, the judge pressed Tracy. Tracy began to respond when her attorney intervened, advising her to remain silent rather than risk exacerbating the situation. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized with an equitable 50-50 split of assets. As part of the settlement, the house was sold. Tracy moved in with her lover, Jim Fielding, while Dusty relocated to a small apartment near his workplace. Jim Fielding poured himself a single malt at his bar, glancing at the painting of Tracy. He reminisced about the pleasure of having her pose after their intimate encounters, her expression revealing her satisfaction. Initially confident that Dusty would acquiesce to their affair or face losing half his assets, both Jim and Tracy were surprised by Dusty's resolve. Over a year after the divorce, Tracy and Jim's relationship began to strain. The heat of their affair cooled, and their physical intimacy waned. Tracy missed the loving affection she had with Dusty over their 27-year marriage, realizing that love and lust shared only the initial letter. 6 months later, Tracy moved into her own apartment after she and Jim parted ways. Soon after, she started a new position as an administrative assistant for a young attorney, noting his ambitious demeanor and wondering about his attitude. Within 2 weeks, the young lawyer made a move on Tracy, despite her initial resistance. 6 weeks into her new job, Tracy found herself entangled with him intimately, much to her surprise. "Did I mention that Nulf was a fantastic lay?" Jim casually remarked to the young attorney a couple of weeks later. "That painting over your bar was just a tease." "She is awfully good," Mr. Hotshot agreed. "Got rid of that painting," Fielding said. "Donated it to a fancy-ass strip club about an hour from here for $5,000 cash. I will write off the full $15,000 purchase price on my taxes." The two lawyers laughed conspiratorially. The playpen wasn't Dusty's usual scene on a Friday night, but he had been invited to his oldest son's bachelor party by Jerry Kubiak, the best man. Dusty expected to make an appearance out of respect and then leave before things got too rowdy. The group of 15 arrived at the upscale club together. After passing ID checks at the door, they proceeded down a corridor toward the main area. Just before entering the main room, Jerry spotted something on the wall. "Oh, damn, look at that babe. That might be the hottest painting I've ever seen," Jerry exclaimed. "All of my women have that look after I'm done with them," Willie Aguilar, another groomsman, shouted. "Holy crap. No way." Jerry suddenly stopped short, reading the name tag attached to the painting. He fell silent, but Willie, without thinking, read the tag aloud for everyone to hear. "Thou shalt not covet," Willie yelled. "Tracy Dustman, as painted by Emile Gaultier." "Hey Robbie, she's got the same name." Willie trailed off as the group gathered around to read the card. Robbie's face drained of color as he absorbed the information and glanced between the painting and his father. Dusty shrugged, addressing both his sons as he continued walking. "Been there, seen that," Dusty remarked calmly. The sons exchanged a bewildered look. They and the rest of the party settled at 3 tables near the stage, waiting for Dusty to explain. "This is how your mother and her scumbag lawyer lover broke the news to me about her affair. This painting was hanging behind the bar at his house. There was no tag, but I knew exactly what and who it was. They thought it was hysterical that I found out at a Christmas party, where apparently everyone at the law firm knew they were sleeping together and had seen the painting. I don't know how it ended up here. Dad, you have to get them to take that down." "That's Mom," Mike urgently whispered to his father. "I'll talk to the manager, but remember, you weren't so concerned when I first told you years ago." "You seemed more interested in what I did to upset her," Dusty replied pointedly. Mike looked sheepish under the group's scrutiny. "Please, Dad. Do something," he pleaded. Dusty appeared to be the calmest person in the group. He quietly got up, approached the bar, and requested to speak to the manager. There was animated discussion and some raised voices before Dusty returned to the group, which surprisingly remained mostly quiet for a strip club crowd. The manager said the owner purchased the painting from a private seller, and it's been quite popular here. If I want to take him down, I can buy it for 10 grand, Dusty reported. I informed him I have no desire to spend 10 grand on an erotic painting of my cheating ex-wife. Dad! Robbie and Mike exclaimed in unison. With that declaration, the evening's festivities came to an abrupt end. Upon returning to Chicago, both of Dusty's sons headed straight to their mother's apartment. Dusty himself retired to his own apartment and slept soundly. Tracy looked worn out as she settled into the groom's parents' pew a few minutes before the wedding was scheduled to commence, Dusty observed. He imagined explaining an erotic, nude, post-coital painting on a strip club wall to their sons had been more challenging than he initially thought. Last night wasn't too awkward, Dusty remarked sarcastically to his ex-wife as she took her seat a few feet away from him in the church pew. Did you know Scumsucker sold that painting? Not until last night, she replied, her cheeks flushing crimson. Since their divorce 5 years ago, the former spouses had spent little time in each other's company. Dusty begrudgingly acknowledged that Tracy still looked good, aside from her red, tired eyes. Following the ceremony and the mother-son dance, Tracy became a popular dance partner at the reception, especially among Robbie's friends. Aware of the conversation with Robbie and Mike the previous night, she anticipated the attention and handled it adeptly when several of the young men attempted to dance too closely or let their hands roam. There was a time when you would have put a stop to this pretty quickly, she remarked to Dusty upon returning to their table after dancing with her fifth eager partner. There was a time when you were my wife and my concern, Dusty replied quietly. Then you became someone else's concern. Now, I suppose, the concern is solely yours. But from what I gather, and the rumors suggest, you have a liking for younger men. Just try to exercise some discretion tonight, for the boy's sake. Tracy's irritation was evident on her face, but she remained silent. She was well aware that nearly all her romantic liaisons since the divorce had been with men closer in age to her sons than to herself. She wondered how her ex-husband had come by this knowledge. Between dances, while sitting at the table with Dusty and various family members, Tracy couldn't help but sneak glances at her ex-husband from the corner of her eye. She noted that the past 5 years had been kind to him, a few lines on his face and some gray hair were the only noticeable changes. His piercing blue eyes and strong jawline were as striking as ever, reminiscent of when they first met what felt like a lifetime ago. Tracy couldn't help but chastise herself inwardly. God, I left this man for what? A little more sex? A little more aggressive sex? Arfk. What an idiot, she thought, consumed by regret. Yeah, sis, you blew it big time, Tracy's sister, Hannah, remarked in her ear, pulling Tracy out of her thoughts. Tell me I just didn't say that out loud, Tracy replied to Hannah. Her sister giggled before responding quietly, no, but the way you've been looking at Dusty hasn't exactly been subtle. You might as well ask him to make love to you right here. Actually, not just make love to me. I want him to make slow, passionate love to me, like we used to. Then cuddle together after. Nobody has done that to me since we split, Tracy confessed. Maybe if you ask him nicely, Hannah suggested. After all, it's Dusty, the nicest guy in the world. If he still loves you half as much as he used to. If asked, Dusty, the nicest guy in the world, might have admitted to still harboring some love for his ex-wife. However, he knew deep down that trust was irreparably broken, and he could never recover from Tracy's betrayal with Fielding. For the first year post-divorce, Dusty didn't attempt to date, despite interest from women in his workplace upon learning of his single status. In subsequent years, he realized single women outnumbered men in his age group, making finding dates easy. His struggle was overcoming his deep-seated trust issues. The morning after the wedding, Dusty woke up in his apartment next to Kristen Alford, Robbie's bride's aunt, a beautiful, busty blonde. Kristen had observed Dusty's stoic reaction to the wedding's festivities, particularly the young men's behavior with the groom's mother. Everyone at the wedding knew the story of Robbie's parents, and Kristen was assessing Dusty's feelings for his ex-wife. Observing Dusty's lack of lingering affection for Tracy, Kristen approached the Dustman family table and invited Dusty to dance. Dusty was struck by her beauty, a 5 feet 7 inches blonde with long legs and a figure-hugging dark blue dress that accentuated her curves. When he noticed she wore no rings on her left hand, Dusty smiled and rose from his chair. Having taken dance lessons early in his marriage due to Tracy's love for dancing, Dusty was skilled on the dance floor. He and Kristen made a striking pair, cutting a dash as they moved. They even found moments to talk during the slow songs. Kristen nestled comfortably against Dusty's chest. Dusty didn't linger long at the groom's family table after his encounter with Kristen. Throughout the evening, when they weren't dancing, they sat together at the bride's family table, their attention solely on each other. Dusty learned that Kristen, at 52 years old, taught high school an hour from Chicago and had been divorced for 2 decades from an abusive husband. If you don't mind my asking, how does someone as beautiful as you stay single for 20 years? Dusty inquired. Major trust issues, for one. Plus, I don't just jump into bed with any man because I need an orgasm, Kristen replied matter-of-factly. Good answer, Dusty said with a smile. The next day, Dusty and Kristen began working on their respective trust issues together. About a year later, they tied the knot in a second wedding that united the Dustman and Alford families. Robbie proudly stood as best man for his father. Meanwhile, Internal Revenue Service Special Agent Michael Dustman ensured that James Fielding faced audits for 12 consecutive years, resulting in over $1 million in additional taxes and fines. Fielding, running late for his 12th audit appointment at the IRS building, was already frustrated by the ongoing scrutiny. He knew he had many enemies, making it impossible to pinpoint who had targeted him with the IRS. These IRS clowns are bleeding me dry, Fielding muttered to himself as he approached the building. Lost in his thoughts and not fully attentive to his surroundings, he passed by a man wearing a baseball hat and dark sunglasses. In a split second, Fielding felt a sudden pain in his groin and collapsed to the ground, barely registering the crackle of the stun gun. Robbie grinned as he calmly returned the weapon to his hoodie pocket and continued walking. Write your opinion in the comments. Thanks for watching and have a great day.